Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about Dave Portnoy from Barstool, um, and his One Bite Pizza show, and the future of Dungeons and Dragons commentary, and where Dungeons and Dragons commentary is going. All right, let's jump into this. Okay, so a friend of mine is really into this YouTube show, Dave Portnoy's One Bite, and it's just pizza, right? Like, and I was watching my friend. I've seen my friend watch it several times, and I'm like, why do you waste your time with that nonsense? What is that, right? Like, and he's like, and I was like, who is that dude? Why are you always watching him eat pizza, very uncautiously out in front of a pizza shop, right? Like, and I just didn't get it. I did not get it. Now, I will say, my head is so filled with Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm so thinking about Dungeons. And to my defense, I love Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so I've been getting into, it sounds astounding that I'm getting in more into Dungeons and Dragons. But as the years go by, I'm getting more and more into Dungeons and Dragons, which is astonishing because my level of interest in Dungeons and Dragons was high like 5 years ago. Now it's like, I'm so incredibly fortunate to have a structure, right? So I have a structure for life. It's I'm a Christian, a husband, and a father, right? And if I didn't have that, I'd be lost. Well, quite literally, but but literally and figuratively, I'd be lost. But I do. So, Christianity is really what grounds me, and it structures every decision I make. And nothing is more important to me than God. And then it's my wife, right? And I really care for her. I try to structure every single choice I make to make sure that she is taken care of first, and that everything the best life I can possibly give her is what I'm striving to do. And then, I'm a father, right? So I want to do right by every one of my children, right? So Christian husband is father. That stays at the top, right? Like that. And actually, I would, yeah. And then fourth most important thing to me is Dungeons and Dragons. And my mind is almost constantly on Dungeons and Dragons when I have those first three things taken care of, right? And I will say, like, God, God, wife, kids, right? Like, there's other things nested in there, right? But beyond that, like, I really am thinking almost constantly about Dungeons and Dragons. So when I see other people enjoying other things, it's hard for me to understand what they're doing, and so this guy, Dave Portnoy, I didn't even know who he was. Apparently he made a lot of money on this company Barstool, which I think has something to do with gambling. But I've seen him 24 times now, and he has this little channel, and this isn't part of his main thing. This is just a side thing for him. But he shows up at a pizza place, he orders your pizza, he literally takes it right outside the shop, and he's got a camera guy, and he takes one bite, and then he gives us a review. Now, one bite is actually a misnomer. He often takes 3, 5, 7 bites, or he often eat a whole slice, but that's okay, no problem. That was probably the beginning, and the showed, and he's hungry. I get it, right? Like, so it's a misnomer. But I thought this was nothing to begin with. I have been stunned at the impact of this show on my friend's life, right? So my friend really loves this show. He watches it every day. He's really a big fan of it, and he has been inspired. And like he's buying a pizza stone so he can put it in the oven and make his own pizza. And he's been watching more shows about how to get into making pizza, and even thinking about switching, like even thinking about making it like how he makes his living. Like, this show has massively impacted him, right? So Dave Portnoy, this guy don't know nothing about making pizza, right? Like, that's not his thing, right? He's just commentating on pizza. He's commentating first and foremost on the pizza that he's eating that day, but he's very much commentating on pizza, right? Like, I know there's a Detroit style, and I know there's a Chicago style. And, just from seeing my friend watch the show, I've learned about pizza, right? And there's a New York style, and Italian pizza is actually quite different than American pizza. But some people have brought that back over, and like, it's a whole thing, right? And so it's really quite fascinating, right? But what really blew me away was this guy. He's a pizza commentator. I am a Dungeons and Dragons commentator, right? And what I want to talk right now is the growing importance of commentating and how and where we're headed with Dungeons and Dragons commentating, right? So first of all, one thing that blew me away was this guy, David Portnoy. He used to just roll up in a shop. He'd get the pizza. He'd walk outside. Nobody knew what he was doing. You know, the pizza shops were like, "What you doing? You got your video there. What's going on?" Right? And he would talk with them. And he always makes it. He's careful to be like. That's the other thing. He's a pizza fan, right? He's not rolling up on pizza shops and going, "This is garbage," right? You know, if he'll just rank it. He'll give it like a 4 or 5. You know, but he's not going to go hard against these people. And he loves pizza, right? And so he is commentating on pizza. But what's really wild was I had seen him for a couple months because my friend was watching him. And I had, and my friend would be like, "Oh, check this out." And I'd, watch the show with him. And it was really interesting that things have changed, right? He's been doing this for a while. And now he's rolling into pizza shops and they have a list, right? They're like, if Dave Portnoy shows up, all this happens, right? And they are ready for him. Like, they are ready. And the reason why is his jank little, like, "Oh, I'm standing in front of your shop eating your pizza. Here's my review. Here's my commentary on your pizza." I kid you not, right? He rolls into a food court, right? And you can find this particular episode on his channel, and it's Square Up Pizza, right? And he said flat out that when he talked to the owner knew exactly who he was, hands him the pizza and said, "Your life's in my hands," right? Saying, "My business is in your hands. If you say this is bad pizza, I'm finished. If you say this is even decent pizza, my business is going to go up 2-3-fold." And guess what? This dude is, that pizza shop owner, 100% right. So my friend is so into this show that we've started to go. We're traveling 30, 40, 50 miles to hit shops that Dave Portnoy has hit in our area. I live in Philly, so he hit quite a few here because, we're a major metropolitan area, right? And so we've tried I think Imperial Pizza was one of them. Fantastic pizza. It's like 30 miles away from my house where it was. It's actually 30 minutes away, and we've gotten it several times, right? But we would have never driven 30 minutes for local pizza. But Dave Portnoy puts you on the map, baby. And people will go to your shop locally, and they will come to your shop when they're traveling, right? Because Dave Portnoy put you on the map, or he took you off the map, all right? So here's the kicker, right? This guy don't know nothing about pizza. He's just commentating on it, right? Like, he don't know how to make it. He does know how to eat it, and he knows what he likes and what he doesn't like, right? But what I think is really interesting is his commentating is powerful. It is impacting. It is valuable. It is to be feared. It is to be exalted if it's good, right? And here's the kicker. Here's where it touches Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons is highly commentated. It's commentated on every single thing it touches. Literally, D&D Errata gets major coverage. Every single thing that happens on Dungeons & Dragons now is talked about day of. If you watch my channel, I've started shifting to what's the most important thing in the proximity of Dungeons & Dragons. I try to get that up every day because there is so much happening on Dungeons & Dragons that not only is everything covered, but it is almost always covered day of. People are jumping on the internet. If Dungeons & Dragons scratches its butt, it is commentated on 1,000 times, right? And this is what I've been telling you. Like, one of the reasons why I've dedicated myself to Dungeons & Dragons at such a level that I have is I've never seen an intellectual property that moves and shakes and wiggles the way Dungeons & Dragons does. It is just off the hizzow. It is like nothing else, right? And I think I know for a fact, a lot of will be, "Oh, it's just a silly little game. You cut some goblins in half, nobody cares." Global, impacting multiple IPs, infiltrated itself fully into Magic the Gathering, infiltrated itself fully into Lego, infiltrated itself fully into Hollywood, right? There's a new movie coming out. I saw the TV glow. Dungeons & Dragons star right at the center of it. Half the movie's coming out, right? Is that a Dungeons & Dragons star in it already? Is that person going to be in the Dungeons & Dragons sequel? When is the next Dungeons & Dragons blockbuster? When is is that, I heard there's a Dungeons & Dragons animated show, a second animated show. It's being discussed regularly with billionaires, right? Like, Dungeons & Dragons is moving at a pace and with momentum and with legacy, and it is constantly moving. There's so much happening on Dungeons & Dragons now that no one can cover it all. No one. Nerd Immersion, great guy. Like, Ted from Nerd Immersion, crushing it, working as hard as he can, constantly apologizing, saying, oh, hey, I'm sorry. I couldn't get to this. Right? And he's not pro. Like, he can't, that dude's got 100,000K sub button. It can't be professional, cannot go pro yet. Not because he's very professional with his content. His channel's much better than mine, no question. Right? But he is really moving on it. But there's so much happening. He wants to cover it all, and he cannot even remotely cover it all, right? So, and here's the kicker. Increasingly, the reason why Dungeons & Dragons is so important, the reason why it has dusted every OSR, dusted every indie, and I'll tell you right now, I'm calling it first. I'm the first one to call this, right? 2023. Every chump OSR had a banner out, put up a tile and had some, jank little OSR or indie game. They're all like, oh, 2023 is the year of crisis for Dungeons & Dragons. OSR and indie are in the year of crisis in 2024. 50th year, and honestly, I swear, it was almost impossible to make money on any OSR or any indie previously. The OSR and indie are in a year of crisis. It's always been people, dumping tons of money into these heartbreaker projects. Now you cannot get shine on almost anything, and the people who are having, and the OSR and the indie is literally, right, they used to not be able to compete with Dungeons & Dragons. Now they can't even compete with Dungeons & Dragons Auxiliary. Every single thing that's popping is D&D Auxiliary, right? Like Daggerheart, ain't nothing but the only reason anybody pays attention to it is because it's being put forward by the #1 dungeon master in the world and a Dungeons & Dragons canon setting writer, Matthew Mercer. Nobody going to even look at anything. You ain't super famous, nobody going to look at your game, right? Matthew Colville, famous for doing D&D 5e, right? Jenny D, if you don't got your face pressed to 5e, you're finished. There's one exception, and that is Kelsey Dion. She is really not highly connected to 5e, and I will say Shadow Dark is still popping. So with very few exceptions, I truly believe the OSR and the indies are in crisis more than they have ever been. So, but the point is, commentary is important, and Hasbro knows how to interact with commentators, right? And they've known for a long time that they have to get along with commentators. They have to be able to interact very directly and very powerfully with commentators, and they are, right? They got in trouble in the beginning of 2023. They immediately held a summit, brought in a whole bunch of influencers, crushed them all, just handled them, right? Just processed every question and sent them all scurrying away with nothing but good things to say. And that was a lot of commentary. The Hato Z issue, right? Very quickly indicated. Kyle Brink. A lot of people are like, oh, Kyle Brink did a bad job. Did a phenomenal job. He got in trouble. He said the wrong things, right? You know why he got in trouble and said the wrong things? He was being genuine and he was being sincere, right? And when you do that, you get in trouble, right? But the reality is you're better off saying things truly, saying things sincerely, and getting in a little bit of trouble, right? And so it's really, I'm really, really fascinated by, how all this is going. And I think commentary is becoming extremely important. And I really feel it. I feel part of it, right? Like last week, we had a very robust conversation on the backup character. And I learned, and you learned, commentary matters, right? And it is part of Dungeons & Dragons and the community around Dungeons & Dragons. And it is extremely powerful, right? I think there are going to increasingly be Dave Portnoys around Dungeons & Dragons, right? And none of them are going to be able to take down Dungeons & Dragons, but they can take down a D&D book, or they can lift it to the skies, right? And they can 10x it, right? And my channel's small. I'm not going to 10x anything. I'm not focused on trying to get more sales on the current D&D stuff. I'm trying to get everybody to understand what Dungeons & Dragons actually is and move off the silliness and start to embrace the noble and the worthy and the incredibly valuable aspects of Dungeons & Dragons. I really think D&D commentary, just like what Dave Portnoy is doing for pizza shops, commentary is a huge part of the success of Dungeons & Dragons, and it's extremely important in how Dungeons & Dragons interacts with its commentators, and part of its success is knowing how to interact with commentators. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion, nothing more, nothing less. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking, subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.